this game is about detail. It seems to me, from what
Yeah.
I've seen, and from what you've shown me about the gameplay. I think we should cover at the very beginning here. I didn't finish the game.
Yeah. But not because you couldn't, you opted not to.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't know. It didn't. It kind of grew away from me after.
Yeah, and I did finish the game.
Mm.
So this episode will be a little different than usual because we actually have different perspectives on this game.
Yeah.
I ended up liking it quite a bit, and what would you say your opinion is? I don't want to say it for you.
My opinion. Well, listen, I quit it because I was frustrated. But the thing that I find frustrating about the game is the sort of, let's say, like the control scheme, I suppose, and as well as like the level design kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But there's also a lot of good that I'll say about it, and I think I'll start with that. I'll start with the combat feels very heavy, and I like that.
Mhm.
I like that the enemies can do a lot of damage to you, and you can do in turn a lot of damage to them.
Yeah.
It feels like every encounter matters that way. I really like, again, the look of it. Like, it looks like nothing else, honestly. And it's like just like super satisfying to watch, like every interaction you have. Like, there's always like a great feedback for it.
Yeah, this game has momentum,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's what I enjoyed about the combat as well. The fact that your every movement feels like it has impact on the enemies as well as the enemies on you. And some of the strategy as you play the game is to deal with that momentum, right? You only get like 3 strikes with your weapon before there's a brief rest,
Mm-hmm.
right? And until you upgrade it, your dash ability has a limit of 3 before there's a slight rest. And then even when you update your dash, you have to sort of build a momentum physically with how you press the button.
Mm-hmm.
And so momentum seems to be a trait that carries throughout the entire experience of playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're going to talk about there's a lot of positive things, but I am curious to know, when did things start to change in terms of you were realizing that maybe you're not going to finish this game?
So I think, well, I had an inkling that I might, not even be frustrated, but would just be kind of bored with it. By the time I realized kind of what your goal was when you go to each area. So the game is designed around like a spoke system. There are four like radial areas that you can go to from the center of the map, which is where you start, and you can go to any of them at the beginning. And because of that, as soon as I had experienced the first area, which I had quite liked, and I found it intense. It ends with like this really like fast-paced, like frantic boss fight.
And you went north, right?
Yeah, so that was the north area. I really liked the sort of symmetrical, like semi-symmetrical design of that area. I thought it was really easy to wrap my head around and still feel like I was exploring. I just thought it was a really cool area. But then when I went to the second area, which happened to be the west area, the part that I started noticing was that like the goal was very simplistic, which is you're just collecting like these little triangle shapes, and you have to collect enough triangle shapes to get to the boss. As far as I understand, that's throughout the game. That's the goal. Like, that doesn't change, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that stays.
So it just felt like I was being drawn into this world from the very start, like feeling kind of fascinated by it. But by the time I went through one of the spokes, I had seen all I needed to see, and it's more of like a personal preference thing. I think that this game, looking back on my experience with it, it may be more for you than me just inherently, because I think it does call back to Zelda and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it does build on that, and it does like kind of draw on like your feelings about it, because like even just the fact that the game doesn't like the camera doesn't follow you when you go out of a certain area of the map. Like the camera will like stop and then move to the next portion.
Yeah, it's
just
like
like Zelda.
segmented
Yeah.
somewhat. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you have to push along the edge to move the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how a lot of hidden areas are hidden, is just the camera's not looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to kind of go far enough to the edge to move the camera.
So the game, I mean, I think that may be, in actuality, the real difference between yours and my experience. I think this game puts a lot of cool twists on the old school games.
Yeah, actually, so what you just said, I want to touch on a little bit more. Because I do think that as soon as you start this game, it's hard not to immediately make comparisons, right? Because my first thought, as soon as you begin and you're in this little hub spot and you realize you're going to be collecting these node type things, and they're in 4 different spots. So it seems like it's going to be a Zelda experience right from the get-go. And obviously you're a character with the sword, so that Zelda continues, and it's isometric. All those things are along the lines of what Zelda had to offer. And it also makes me think of like Fez. Remember Fez?
Mm-hmm.
And how it feels like you're just collecting keys and the more keys you collect, the further you get into the world, and the puzzles are not explicit, right? So that comparison comes in. And then as I got further into the combat, I started thinking, it's like Bastion, right? The combat is you're using different movesets and you're upgrading and using these upgrades, and it changes how you interact with the enemies and all that. So all of those things are happening, and the whole time I'm thinking, okay, comparison. But by the end of the game, I do think that it doesn't do any of those things. It's not like Zelda because it doesn't actually have puzzle rooms in the way that Zelda does. In Zelda, you literally are solving puzzles. In this one, you're blocked off from areas and you need to solve a problem, but you're not solving puzzles. You're more figuring out how to maneuver through the environment. That's the important part. It's not about like flipping switches or something. Although there are switches in it, but they're not posed to you in a puzzle way. And so in that sense, then the comparison to Dark Souls kind of comes in, where it's about, how do I develop a relationship with this environment in such a way that I know how to maneuver through it. But even then, it's not like Dark Souls, because it doesn't wrap in on itself in quite the way that Dark Souls does. It does it in a small scale way. And then it like I said, it doesn't succeed in all these things because it doesn't end up like Fez, because Fez actually Fez offers much the same mystery that this game offers, right? As you talk to people, there's all this symbolism. Everyone speaks in symbols, and throughout the world there's all these symbols, and so it seems like a puzzle to be solved in that way, which is what Fez offered. But Fez had a certain consistency to those symbols and had enough intrigue built into those symbols that you and I actually felt intrigued enough to want to deal with it and actually figure it out. And this one, having finished the game, I don't know that those symbols amount to as much. They're there and they seem important. And maybe I'm missing something, but I definitely I put the full amount of commitment into this. I collected all the nodes and all the different spots. I didn't collect there's these little walls of text that you can decipher, and if you collect enough of those, it seems to reveal something, but I didn't do all of that. But I did explore the environments pretty extensively, and I didn't find myself feeling like I got enough of a reward in the discovery department as far as the symbols go.
Yeah, I mean that part's a bit of a shame. You seem to have gotten really good at it. Like from what I saw, you took to collecting items and exploring the environment like really well.
But I actually think like it would have been nice to have some element of Zelda-ish, like having your upgrades actually feel valuable and important. Because all of the upgrades are optional, they don't end up feeling important enough. They're useful and they do make for a better gameplay experience. I actually feel that some of your negative experience may have come from the fact that you didn't get far enough to get some upgrades that I think really help the experience be more fun. But that's not necessarily your fault. Obviously, the game should motivate you to want to do that. But it is unfortunate that the upgrades being optional, they don't amount to very much, and I think that actually negatively affects the experience. Now, let me explain some of what happened to me, which might be why I enjoyed it more than you. I started by going west.
Mm-hmm.
And having done all the areas, I do think west is the worst area.
Mm-hmm.
But doing that first is helpful because the whole experience was fresh to me at that point, right? And so I was still feeling like I was discovering things and it was new, and like that motivated me to keep going. And I was able to finish the west area just fine. And then I moved on to the north, which, having completed all areas, I think the north is absolutely the best area. Mm-hmm. And then I went to east, which is totally cool, and the east is like really interesting, and the south obviously is where the end is. And so my experience through the game was getting better and better as it was going along. Mm-hmm. And you had the opposite. You went north, which is the best area, and then you just got worse.
Yeah, apparently, in your opinion, the north is the best area. I went there first, and then I went to the west area, and it kind of felt like just a messier, kind of more tedious version of the north area, and then I got lost. So it kind of, I feel like my expectations were like perfectly backfired.
Yeah, you ended up getting disappointed, and then because you got lost, you got irritated.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So from my end, because I got to have the environments feel like they were getting better, mm-hmm. right? And at the same time, my character's getting upgrades, so the combat is also getting better. Mm-hmm. I actually felt like I had a nice arc mm-hmm. into the experience, right? And that arc I really enjoyed. So to get onto some of the positive. The reason that I having finished the game, I actually really like it, is it all, when you have these upgrades, like when you get the little bomb that you kick towards enemies, when you get all of the dash upgrades, and like you can dash through bullets, and you can dash and cut enemies in a line. Mm-hmm. Like when you get all of those, the combat starts to really feel fast paced and strategic, and you feel capable mm-hmm. through and through. What I would compare it to is not so much Bastion, which is the comparison we made earlier, but to the feeling I had when remember when we were playing Ninja Gaiden all the time?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like that feeling in Ninja Gaiden where you feel more than capable to decimate everyone, mm-hmm. but everyone's really good, yeah. right, in the game. All your enemies are totally badasses, mm-hmm. but you have all of the abilities available to be equally badass. That's what I felt like as I got further in Hyper Light Drifter. Mm-hmm. So that, by the last area, I was like kicking ass, and I felt like it was coming out of my skill set, mm-hmm. right? Which I had evolved through just playing the game enough, right? Mm-hmm. And I do have similar complaints to you. Like you were saying how you got lost in the west area. I got lost a couple of times. And some of that is to the fact that this game relies on you kind of hugging the wall a lot. Mm-hmm. And that's in place of puzzles. It doesn't have, thought out puzzle rooms or anything like in an explicit sort of way. It just has puzzles in the sense that, oh, there's a hidden room, but you need to be hugging the wall just right to find it. Mm-hmm. And I don't like that. I don't like that. There's other games that do that, and I don't. It's not an enjoyable way to experience an environment.
Right. It's pixel hunting basically.
Yeah, it feels a lot like that. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, you didn't experience that enough to get good at it, so you got lost. Mm-hmm. I kept experiencing it to the point that eventually it became second nature. But it's a weird thing to have to get used to, because it's like I got used to it, but it's not inherently fun. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? So even though I ended up having an enjoyable experience, I feel like I had an enjoyable experience in spite of the mechanic itself. Mm-hmm. It would have been nicer to have more thought out puzzles, or more thought out environments that give you all the information you need, so then you can figure it out mentally. This one gives you a lack of information, mm-hmm. and then you're figuring out the information you lack, which is not, to me, a good design for a game like this.
Right, yeah, it's like it's actively hiding itself from you. It's weird because I think the game, you said something earlier about the fact that the game, while in some ways paying homage to old games, really doesn't actually do what those old games did. It seems like the game design elements are kind of muddled, and they can create an experience like the one you had, and that sounds like an amazing experience. But if you shuffle it a different way, it can be not an arc but a crazy sine wave.
Yeah. But I think that it would help a lot for early on for the game to give you some kind of sense of what you're doing all this work for. Right? Because like you gave up because it sort of seemed like I don't want to keep doing this if I'm not already having fun. And like I got to the point where I was having a ton of fun, but so I got to see the reward of that. But most people playing, I think if you reach the point of extreme frustration, you don't know that there's going to be a reward. It's sort of like, am I just wasting my time? Is this not going to go anywhere? And I want to say it does go somewhere. I think it was worth it in the end. I really enjoyed the crap out of the game by the time I was done. It would be nice if the game somehow gave both of us a clearer sense early on that was going to happen. Maybe one way of doing that would be just to give you some of these abilities that I think are integral.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I really didn't know what I was in for, and I didn't know what the end game was going to be like. It really makes you kind of appreciate like the simplicity of like the beginning of Metroid games where you have all of the abilities at the start, and you just get a sense, or like the beginning of Mega Man X, where you just know for a moment that this game's gonna be really cool, even if your powers get taken away from you at the beginning.
Yeah. I think that's exactly why that's there, right? It's like, okay, you're gonna trudge through some really difficult sections, and you're gonna feel really underpowered, but there's a bonus to come, right? Yeah. And so it's unfortunate that this game didn't. It has some shortcomings that unfortunately, like you're an example, can stop people from playing. But it has enough grade in it that for the people who persevere, who get into it, like myself, they can really, really get into it. So without spoiling anything, I did finish the game. And if you're starting this game and you think that the narrative is vague, and if you maybe have an inkling that, okay, some of this will make some sense by the end, it's important to note that it's going to stay vague. Not necessarily in a bad way, because it is interesting. I actually find my assumptions about the story kind of interesting. I assume it has a lot to do with death and reincarnation and things. But, like, I don't know, and I'm filling in a lot of the gaps. And so in that sense, like, if you like the type of storytelling, or rather non-storytelling that you find in something like Dark Souls, you may like this a lot. But I just, without spoiling, just don't expect answers at the end. I don't want people thinking that they're going to play this game and then feel 100% satisfied. It's not going to be like the end of a movie. It's not going to wrap it all up or anything. But the bosses are interesting. We didn't talk about the bosses.
Right. I only experienced one.
Oh yeah. Huh. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So you experienced like the hardest boss in the whole game.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, the North boss is nuts, and he is the hardest boss. Having done all of them, the North boss is absolutely insane.
Yeah, I feel like I had to fight him like 20 times or something.
Yeah, I don't think mine was that far off from that number. I found the bosses really engaging. I thought the North boss was super hard, but I actually really like how hard he was, because he gave you the North boss gave you indications of what he was gonna do. So it was like really hard, but it was just because you needed to react quick enough.
Yeah, it always felt like with that boss, it felt like there was weirdly almost too much telegraphing, and he was just so fast, like that it didn't matter that he gave away every move that he was gonna do. It was a really cool fight. It was really fast, and it's like a testament to just like the really interesting like combat like mechanics, like the dodging and everything. It is a lot like Ninja Gaiden in that way.
Yeah, and that's actually when you have to be good at using the momentum in that moment. Because if you overdo it, like if you try to go for more than enough hits, you're gonna get hit and you're gonna die. You have to get good at like dodging, waiting for just the right time, getting a few hits in, getting away, and also dealing with all that telegraphing that the boss does. That's sort of what makes it hard. Is the telegraphing is overwhelming, right? Like it's just so much stuff on screen telling you what he's about to do it's like cluttered almost. But I found it enjoyable. I think the other bosses are a better balance of that kind of stuff. They all telegraph their attacks. In fact, even the enemies telegraph their attacks. Right, like before they hit you, there's like a slight flicker of where they're gonna land.
Right.
So you get the game's good in that sense, in the way that it sort of gives you a lot combat wise. It gives you all the information you need. It's just in the world that it doesn't give you all the information you need, right? But the bosses remain consistent. I really enjoyed the boss fight. I think a lot of them are really memorable. I remember most of them. They're mostly pretty damn hard. But if you're like a Dark Souls type guy and you enjoy that kind of challenge, it's the right kind of hard. I like it. I think that if you're willing to put in the time, this game actually will pay off. I think combat wise, and in terms of the world is actually really interesting. I think exploring it is interesting. You should know that you're going to be hugging the walls. It's not a perfect experience. I don't think that this is the next great indie game, but I think it's a really good game. And I look forward to what this developer comes up with next. I think they have really good taste for a lot of things. It's just a few minor hiccups that I feel like dampen the experience for both of us, and for you more so, right?
I mean, I honestly think like this game is like, there are aspects of this game that are a standout success because it has like every single thing that you could possibly want out of it. Like it has really cool combat. It has really cool looking environments. It has like upgrades, which apparently amount to like a complete change of the way that the combat feels, and that's like a really special and hard thing to do in a game. Because I imagine like if you had gone down a completely different upgrade path, you could have had a completely different like, customized character. So that's great. I just think the game has kind of like a bad organization to it. But the elements of it are like astonishing. It's a really like memorable game, even from what little I played of it.
Okay, so that's it. We recommend it with some caveats, and just keep in mind.
Go west first.
Yeah, yeah. Go get west out of the way, and you'll know what that means when you start the game. It splits off north, south, east, and west. And just know that it's not gonna be perfect, but there is a lot of good stuff in it. And if you just like good art and good sound design, then this is the game for you, I would think. Okay, thanks for listening.
Thank you.